Now, as I said in the last video, before we begin creating our financial statements, we want to make sure that we're relying on good numbers and accurate data. And sometimes, despite our best efforts, things happen. And so we're going to talk about how you know you've made a mistake, and then some of the common mistakes and how to identify those mistakes. So we've gotten to the trial balance stage, and so we see we've added our debits and they total 10,580, and we added our credits. Whoops. They're supposed to total, well, they're supposed to equal. So not sure where the mistake is, but 10,700 is our problem. So whether, again, we just failed to make two entries, whether we entered a debit that should have been a credit or vice versa, we've got to figure that out. So the first thing that you want to do is just go back and check your math. Sometimes it's just the errors are in plain sight, and if you go back, recheck your math. Hopefully, you're not doing this, frankly, manually. That at a minimum, you're at least using something that will calculate for you, like Excel or something like that. But even in Excel, if you're not careful and you're adding a column of numbers and you inadvertently don't select the entire column, you may miss something. So Excel will calculate correctly, but only what you tell it to. And if you inadvertently exclude a cell from the addition, then you're going to be off. So if you're using Excel or paper and pencil, go back, just recheck, make sure that your totals are accurate for what you believe you're adding together. And then go see if you inadvertently, when you were putting your trial balance together, did you accidentally put something in the debit balance column that really has a credit balance or vice versa? And so if we've gotten through those things and we still haven't figured out, we've checked our math, our columns add correctly, and we didn't inadvertently, when creating our trial balance, put something in the wrong column. So the next thing we look at is maybe when we did a journal entry, we entered to the ledger, maybe we inadvertently only entered some of the debits or some of the credits, but we left off part of the transaction. It would be one possibility. So you want to go back through your transactions and make sure that in fact you've actually you haven't omitted part of a transaction. Then what you want to do is take the difference. So the difference here between your two accounts, you're going to want to figure out what that difference is. And so that looks like $120 difference. And you're going to want to divide that by 2. So if you divide by 2 and you have a transaction, an entry that looks suspiciously like that number divided by 2, that probably means that you posted a debit or a credit twice, or you posted a credit as a debit and a debit as a credit. But that's certainly someplace to look. Then, I always thought this was very interesting. If you find that the difference between your debits and credits, in our case is $120, and you divide that difference by 9, if it divides equally by 9, you may have transposed two numbers. So, and again, this would be sort of the third step in the process. So first you check your math. Second, you make sure all your transactions were entered correctly, or that you entered the entire transaction. And then the third step, if you still haven't found your error, is did you transpose two numbers when you were going from the journal to the ledger or even from the source document? And so it's quite possible that you may not have just written the number down correctly. So dividing by 9 would be the telltale sign that you've transposed two numbers. So just go back and recheck your numbers and make sure that you haven't inadvertently switched them around while you were going from process to process. And then, or it could be a slide error. And what a slide error is when you inadvertently put the decimal point in the wrong place. And transposition errors, we talked about that, entering something as $250, but you recorded it as 520. You're going to be able to identify that because it's divisible by 9. So again, if steps 1, 2, and 2 is divided into A, B, and C don't work, then you really got to go back and check go back to the source documents, and you're just going to have to go back and retrace through all of your postings since the last time you were in balance. So one of the advantages to running this trial balance with some frequency is that if you get out of balance, all you really need to do is go back to the last time that you did this and you were in balance. So if you did it a week ago, you're only looking at a week's worth of transactions that you have to pick through. Whereas if you did it a month ago, it's a whole lot more. If you only did it yesterday, that's even better because you just have today's transactions to figure out. Okay, so now you've gone back, you've found your mistake. The question then becomes how to fix it. And the answer to that depends on where you're at in the process when you realize you've made the mistake. We do not erase. Erasing is not an option. It suggests that somebody's trying to hide something. Ideally, again, not that everybody's perfect, but you want to make sure that your entries are done very carefully so that you don't have to make corrections. And the reason is that it's going to be very obvious, and you'll see in a minute why, that a correction had to be made. And that's going to tell everybody else who looks at your company's books that you made a mistake. And hopefully there are not lots of them. So we've got first the ruling method, and we're going to use this when we've got two kinds of mistakes. When you have an incorrect journal entry that we've entered it in the journal but haven't yet posted to the ledger, or when we made a correct entry but we posted it to the wrong account or in the wrong amount. So here are examples of both of those and how we would fix those. So we've got the general journal where we inadvertently posted originally to the entertainment expense, should have been the wages. So now we've crossed it out, we've written the correct one above it, and we've put our initials so that everyone knows it was us. Down here we use the correct accounts, we just did it in the wrong amounts. So again, crossed out, correct amount written in, and initials. We then have the correcting entry method. And this is what happens when you've journalized and posted to the wrong account. We've got to make a new entry because we've got to now fix this. So remember, we can't just erase. So just to recap, this works before, see, you notice we've got no posting reference in here. So we haven't yet made it to the ledger yet. So write in the correct one, cross out the old one, works before you've reached that ledger phase. So we'll go through an example of what happens if you've made it through the ledger phase and then realize that you've made a mistake. So in this case, we're going to assume that a $400 payment for rent was incorrectly debited to repair expense, but it was correctly credited to cash. And so what we need to do is we need to get $400 out of repair expense and put it into rent expense. So we're going to now do original entry alone. We're not going to cross anything out, but we're going to go in, and now we've discovered this on the 25th. We're going to enter the rent expense and for the $400. And now we're going to credit it from the repair expense because we need to get it out of the repair expense. We're not going to touch our cash at this point. This is just going to correct our error. And then we're going to write why we've had to do it so that everybody else can come in and laugh at us for having made a mistake. Okay, and so now we're at the general ledger for the rent expense. And we've now got a correct, we show this is a correcting entry from the journal page 6, debit to our rent, and that shows that we'll have a balance for this period of $400 paid in rent. And now we're going to show the repair expense. And you'll see that we've got the 25th. So the 15th was our original incorrect entry. It is going to stay there. We'll indicate then on the 25th it's correcting, and that will be the credit entry, which will then remove it. And now you'll see, we were carrying a debit balance, which we continue to carry, but it will now return the balance to $50, which it was prior to our incorrect entry. And that concludes Chapter 4.